can I have another wine?
You're listening to the Giggle Gang podcast.
I don't know what I'm talking about.
If you want it, just come get it.
A Giggle Gang podcast.
Just be myself.
For fuck's sake.
You know, sometimes people pay me to say ridiculous shit, and sometimes I just say it for free.
That's hectic.
You're listening to the Giggle Gang podcast.
With chafing in England.
Yeah, I'm fat myself, so yeah.
I don't think you're that fat though. You've definitely got a lot of room to move.
I've got room, but I have been fatter. Let's see if I can find that. I'm lucky that I was very ill about a year ago, and then it all dropped off, and I was like, brilliant.
So all you've got to do is like get like pneumonia or something.
It wasn't pneumonia. It was so I'm so depressed that antidepressants give me like allergic reaction, essentially.
What?
Basically, right. Are we recording?
Yeah.
Oh, right, brilliant. Right, so basically, if whatever's wrong with my brain, me taking antidepressants, the chemical that causes me to be like happy makes me essentially have an MDMA overdose. So I end up really sweating, and if I eat curry, I look like some ham draped over a skull.
What?
Oh, mate, I get really ill.
So serotonin doesn't produce in your body correctly?
I think that's basically what they're going to tell me in July.
Okay.
I've thought for ages that I've got something called serotonin syndrome because it only came in after I started taking antidepressants. And then luckily I was able to lose loads of weight.
Yeah.
Every time I was going back into the doctors, I know it was like every couple of weeks, and I was like, oh, do you know what? I am getting blood tests here to see if we've got like something really serious. But look at that weight. Brilliant.
Every cloud, eh?
Then when my blood tests came back fine, and I was like, oh, do you know what? This is a win-win.
Well, I didn't come here to talk about your health issues because I know that you have your own podcast, which is to do with conspiracy theories.
Oh, yeah.
But I think has it died?
It's took a break because I've been doing my masters. So
In comedy?
So I've been doing my masters in contemporary performance. I've been kind of looking at, and I've been using comedy as like the vehicle and the various kind of aspects of art that I've been using it as a lens on. So I've been doing that. So like the last semester that I've just done, I looked at mental health and using performance as therapy, and then using comedy performance as therapy, and like the pros and cons of doing that, because I just feel like a lot of comedians use comedy cathartically, and I just wanted to look into that for kind of comedians, but also non-comedians as well.
Okay.
But because
why did you point to me when you said non-comedians?
I just vaguely pointed, mate. I remember the first time I met you, and you were like, "Oh well, I'm a radio broadcaster anyway."
None of this matters. I still have that exact same attitude. Why did I tell you I'd got into comedy?
Because we were doing a shit bingo hall in
yes
in Farnsworth.
Yeah.
And I had to just tell two old women to shut up for a good 10 minutes.
I got up on stage and tried to do a joke about my parents' sex life, and everyone was just disgusted by me.
I know, and you'd have thought that they'd be like, oh, do you know what? You talk about old people fucking. We're old people. We enjoy fucking.
Yeah.
We can relate. But no, they were like, oh, God.
Do you really think that old people do enjoy fucking? I feel like it gets better.
I found out my dad's got a lot of other kids that I never knew about, so probably, yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
How many other kids?
Well, I thought I was an only child, and then it turns out I'm the fifth of five.
Two older kids, right?
Yeah, they're all older. My mum managed to tie him down.
Right. And they're still together now?
Well, he's dead now, so...
Okay.
But she has his ashes on the mantelpiece, so...
So she's technically got him by the bollocks?
Yeah, that's still
forever?
Yeah, by the powdery balls.
Yeah.
Because that's all he is now, powder.
So how old's your mum compared to your dad? Are they...
Well, my dad died quite young, so he was only 59 when he died.
Really? Did
Yeah.
he live fast and loose? Like, did he have a...
Well, he had 5 kids, so yeah, I suppose he did.
To 5 different women?
To, I want to say 3.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't know. I never got told about this until his funeral, so I'm very much in the dark.
And then these kids just rocked up to the funeral?
No, my cousin got drunk, fucked my friend, and then went, oh, do you not feel like if there's something that you should know about your dad? And I was like, oh God, he's going to turn out to be a pedo. And she was,
Your dad's going to turn out to be a pedo?
yeah, I was like, he's going to be a sex offender. Like, this is what it is. And she
Did
went,
you live with your dad like the whole time?
yeah, I lived with my dad that like entire
You think you would have known he was a pedo?
Well, I didn't know he had 4 other kids, so anything was possible. Looking back on it. So yeah, and she went. Your mum's not your dad's first wife. He's had other wives, and I was like, oh God, I bet he's like a bigamist or a polygamist, and then I was like, I reckon, like, you know, I could have slept with like one of my like siblings and not know about it. But like I looked at, I've like met a load of them, and like all the people who share my dad's DNA, myself included, are ugly as fuck. So
yeah, I get you.
I think I'm as uninterested in them as they probably are in me. So
Yeah.
I don't have to worry about having slept with any of them.
Was your dad ugly?
Yeah, I think he looked like, my mum used to say he looked like Homer Simpson in a wig.
How did he manage to shag so many birds then?
Well, I don't know.
Did he have the charm? Was he a charming
He
gentleman?
was just very nice.
Okay.
So you
Was
know.
he kind?
Yeah, he was nice. He was kind, and he was a nurse, so probably he had a lot of access to people with low self-esteem.
And ironically, you're now dating a nurse.
Yeah, I know, annoying.
You better hope your dad doesn't get your hands on it. This is so inappropriate.
I don't care.
I've gone and given myself the giggles on the dumbest joke ever about your dead father banging your current nurse girlfriend.
Yeah, anything's possible, isn't it?
But I wanted to talk about conspiracies because you are a person that I think could sway me into believing some conspiracies. And the last time we spoke, you told me about 2 conspiracies. The Titanic wasn't real. Well, the Titanic wasn't actually the Titanic. It was a sister ship called...
The Olympic.
The Olympic. Okay, and you also told me that Miley Cyrus or Hannah Montana or whatever is... No, the other girl... What's her name? Avril Lavigne.
Oh, Avril Lavigne's dead. Loads of people, I think. She's
Yeah. Have you got any others for me? Let's discuss.
What do you want to talk about? Do you want to talk about the stupid ones or the ones that are like...
Ones that I might believe.
Think
No, I
might
don't want to talk about dumb ones.
Alright, okay, so ones that I think are believable.
And ones that you know about.
So do you know who the first man in space was?
Yeah, Neil Armstrong.
No, that's the first man on the moon.
Oh, first man in space? No, I don't know.
So, a man called Yuri Gagarin, Russian cosmonaut, and so he's the first man in space, but the conspiracy theorists say that he's the first man that we know about being in space, because according to some conspiracy theorists, the CPPP or USSR sent a load of cosmonauts up, didn't make it back alive, and they just covered it up.
Okay.
So I think that one.
So he was the first one to make it back alive?
Yeah, he was the first one to make it back alive, therefore...
That makes sense.
Yeah, so I think that there's quite a bit of weight in that.
But, like, are there any, like, controversial ones? Like, do you believe in the 9/11 stuff?
Do you know what? Well, I decided when we set up this conspiracy theory podcast that we weren't going to talk about ones that I thought could get us into trouble.
Okay.
Because...
Isn't that every conspiracy theory could possibly get you into trouble?
Well, not so much into trouble, but like upset people. Because like I don't mind offending people. Like I'm not bothered about people taking offence to what I do or what I like joke about.
Yeah.
But I don't like people being upset about stuff that I've like chose to like do or make or joke about. Because in my eyes, like being upset and being offended are like 2 different things.
Okay. Yep. I get you.
And I feel like, so the ones that we kind of went, that we shouldn't really touch was 9/11 because it's
People died.
kind of too recent. In terms of like.
Really?
Well, in terms of, we could be talking about stuff. If I'm right, there was like over, I want to say 2,000 people who like died in the events.
Mm-hmm.
Say each one of those had a mother and father. Say each one of those had like 2 kids. That's like potentially 8,000 people that could get upset at like a piece of content that we've put out.
Yeah.
So we didn't really want to touch that one. And the other one is that there's a lot of conspiracy theories that are the Bilderberg group are like running the world.
The Bilderberg group.
The Bilderberg group.
Not the like place where you go to build like a custom made bear.
No.
Okay, what's the Bilderberg? What, I don't understand what it is.
So the Bilderberg group are supposedly this family in inverted commas that run places like the US Treasury.
Is this like
banks,
the Rothschilds?
Like the Rothschilds. But I feel like if you strip those back, they're essentially they're quite anti-Semitic.
Okay.
And again, I don't want to be touching stuff and joking about stuff where if you go one step further, we're essentially just making fun of 6 million people. So we on purposely said we weren't going to touch stuff like that. In terms of like 9/11, I mean, things that are odd about it, the fact that they were running a very similar flight simulation with the US Air Force that same day.
As to what would happen if it happened? Or?
So they often do what are called, in inverted commas, war games, where they do simulations of things that could happen, and they were running the simulation of a passenger jet that had been hijacked for like a Middle Eastern terrorist group, and they were running that, I think, somewhere along the Midwest. So the people who were running that, even if they'd have been able to intercept what was happening in New York, it would have been like really confusing for them to be going, oh no, the thing that you're doing now is actually happening on the West Coast. So that's like quite odd. The fact that George Bush and a whole load of people were I mean, everyone's seen that picture of him, telling a story and then getting told, and then him continuing telling the story, which is also really weird. The fact that
like getting told what to say.
No, so he's in a kindergarten, and he's telling stories to a bunch of kids, and he and like one of his entourage comes up to him and says, whispers something in his ear, and he carries on reading.
Like the World Trade Center's been attacked.
Yeah, and he carries on reading the book rather than cover it, going, oh, do you know what, I'm actually going to have to stop this right now. Like, I remember when I was 15, I was here when the 7/7 bombings happened.
What were the 7/7 bombings?
So that was a bunch of bombs that went off in tube stations in London.
Okay.
On the 7th of July. And I remember that because there was a bunch of army personnel in my school that day doing, I don't know, some sort of community outreach or whatever they were doing. But I remember them basically hearing about what had happened in London, and then them just straight up leaving and going straight down to London to help out with what was happening. So for me personally, to have that as a comparison versus what happened with George Bush, the president, being told about it and then carrying on as normal for like another 20 to 30 minutes, that's like unusual and odd. The fact that the Pentagon got hit, which,
and a bunch of files just went missing.
A bunch of files went missing. Load of not very much coverage of that at all, really. And some people think that wasn't a passenger jet; that was actually a missile that went into the Pentagon.
What about that picture that there is of the jet sitting in the edge of the Pentagon, like?
I feel like I'm going into my own podcast now.
No. This is what I want.
So, some people say that because of everything that happened around the Pentagon, that the images are like so heavily photoshopped and doctored that rather than
the images of the Pentagon or of the attack?
Of the Pentagon post the attack, are so, they're so heavily classified, but also because they wanted to cover up the fact that they got hit by a missile, they've been photoshopped to look like a plane rather than a missile, because a missile would potentially breach international law.
How can you cover that up though? Isn't there raw video footage from people on the ground?
Well, you got to bear in mind, this is 2001. Not everybody had camera phones at that point. I mean, the only reason why the New York one was the two trade center towers was so heavily because there was loads of news reporters in New York that day. I mean, the fact is, Trade Center 7 got hit as well, and that came pretty much straight down. And again, there's barely any video evidence of that.
That's at Tower 7?
Yeah, Tower 7.
Right. Didn't they say that it didn't get hit, it just fell all on its own?
Yeah, very odd, isn't it? Very, very... There's a lot of weird shit around 9/11. I think... I mean, for me, I think... With a lot of conspiracy theories, if you follow the money, there's a lot of credence in those ones where people have a lot to gain. And George Bush had... he had shares, or at least his dad had shares in big oil and arms manufacturing, and for that to happen, and then the consequential war in Iraq and the war in Afghanistan, which gave essentially the US government, God, I feel, again, when we do our podcast, we do this and then I listen back through it and I go, God, what is it I can actually put out? What's going to get me in trouble here?
You've got no choice with this one, it's all going out.
So, Afghanistan, there's a whole load of poppy fields, and Iraq, there's a whole load of oil.
Yep.
And
poppy fields used to make opium, to make heroin.
Yeah.
For those that don't know.
That's what the conspiracy theorists say anyway.
Yep.
That essentially the
it's
US...
It's true, it's a fact, it is. It's
yeah,
a perfect place to grow heroin.
And the US government now are in places which they can oversee the biggest amount of heroin going out into the world, but also they're overlooking billions and billions of dollars worth of arms, munitions, and also oil from the Middle East, which, you know, also again carrying that on with ISIL in Syria. The Bush family certainly stood to make a lot of money out of the back of 9/11, which initially wasn't actually connected to Afghanistan or Iraq, and yet it led to both of the situations that we're in now.
Yep, and with the support of the American people and the American law enforcement as well, that were like, you know, we do not negotiate with terrorists. We will show them what a military powerhouse we are, and the whole country got behind it because 9/11 was such a devastating tragedy to happen to the people of America. They were like, where can we channel our anger? You know what I mean? Like it's like if you're a girl in a bar, right, and someone touches your ass, and you turn to your boyfriend and you go, "Someone just touched my ass." He just turns to the first bloke he can find and just goes, "Ah!" You know, "Why are you touching me, missus?" And it's just like that may not even be the person that committed the crime or that, you know, inflicted that damage, but you can get behind it so quickly if you're ready to fire up. If you imagine, you know, America as a bloke from Salford that's had a few rum and cokes.
I can totally imagine it as...
It's a good comparison.
As some little dickhead, which, you know, arguably they're now losing a lot of their power anyway, but...
Who, America?
Yeah, in terms of their actual say on kind of global politics, as if they've overstretched themselves. But yeah, I think if you follow the money with a lot of conspiracy theories, you'll find a fairly tangible reason for why a lot of things happened.
Okay. Have you got another theory for me that we can really get into?
Right. Let's see.
I know I didn't warn you about this. I've just sort of got you to come in. We'll do a bit of conspiracy and then we'll do a bit about you.
I'm not bothered. Honestly, I'm fine. Either way, I'm just trying to think of ones that we like really liked but didn't necessarily either like manage, because we tended to go, oh, do you know what, we can't have these be like too heavy, so we would, and purposely, if something was more factual than funny, sometimes it'd just go in the bin.
Really?
Yeah, because, you know, we wanted it to be funny more than anything else. So right, conspiracy, right, Diana, there's loads of weird stuff about Diana.
Okay. I don't really know much about Diana other than she was in a limousine in France. She went through a tunnel. The limo driver had an accident in the tunnel.
Yeah.
And everyone in the limo died?
Not everyone in the limo died. One passenger survived. The driver, her, and her boyfriend all passed away.
Okay.
And the thing that makes it weird is that there were 7 CCTV cameras in that tunnel, of which there's not a single frame of CCTV footage from any of the cameras that have been found, or at least released to the public. There was several...
Is that because out of respect, though, if somebody dies?
Well, conspiracy theorists say that it was...
There's no such thing as respect.
Well, certainly not in that case, because one of the reasons why it happened was because they were trying to get away from paparazzi.
Right.
But the conspiracy theorists say that one of the cars wasn't a paparazzi, it was actually someone potentially from MI5 trying to ram them off the road.
Okay.
Yeah. So there was a white Fiat Punto, can't remember, Fiat Punto was my car. So there was a white Fiat that...
I don't know Fiat, mate. All I know is Punto and 500, and they're pretty fucking small vehicles.
Neither of them. But there was a white Fiat, and it was seen going into the tunnel with the pair of them. And some people think it was kind of harassing them on the road. And there was white paint on their car, which was likely from some sort of collision, at least Diana's car touching this white car, and they never ever found the driver of the white Fiat.
Okay.
Which that for me is really odd that would happen.
Yeah. Was it only a 1-car wreck?
So they've basically I believe the limo went into the wall or maybe a pillar.
Okay.
But they did find white paint on the limo, and it's Diana's limo, and her boyfriend was the son of Mohammed Al Fayed, who used to own Harrods. A limo that they were driving would have been pristine. So the fact that it had this paint on it from a car that never ever got found, and quite frankly, if that did happen, that then makes it a criminal case regardless of them dying, because then it also becomes a hit and run, and that driver is then culpable in the decision of hitting a car on the road and also not informing the authorities or the insurance company.
Okay. Do you know why she was in France?
Well, she was... I want to say she was just kind of travelling.
Okay. Just being a princess.
Well, she weren't a princess at that point. She'd been stripped of all of her...
Why?
Because she'd split up with Charles, and...
Oh.
Well, this was the other thing as well.
See, I don't know about the royal family, mate. We don't fuck with the royal family like you guys do.
So she was going out with Prince Charles, had two kids, Prince William and Prince Harry. There's loads of conspiracy theories about Harry not being Charles's kid, right?
Because he does look distinctly different.
He looks distinctly different, and the person who they say it was, I can't remember his name right now, but occasionally they'll the papers will run stories about him and stuff like that.
Okay.
So what the conspiracy theorists say is that she was one of the reasons why she might have been killed is that she was pregnant with Dodi Al Fayed's kid. Now, that shouldn't really be an issue, but what conspiracy theorists say is that if Harry isn't Charles's kid, and he at the time was third in line to the throne, and then she gives birth to essentially a half Muslim heir of an Egyptian, right? That kid there, if he's also not Charles's and Harry's also not Charles's, that kid there has as much right to be in third in line to the throne as Harry does.
Right. And that would mess up...
And that would, mess up all sorts of, royal bloodlines, all sorts, because they make footloads of money,
It's very incestuous, though, isn't it? It's opened up now that they've had, William's married a commoner.
Well, she's not though, is she?
Isn't she?
No, she's not. She's still,
She's outside of the royal family.
Once or twice removed, but she's still, fairly high up in terms of society.
Okay. But then Meghan Markle is obviously the biggest.
Yeah. But obviously this is something that we're talking about like 20 odd years ago.
Yeah.
So it would have been...
Diversity has now been opened up.
Yeah.
The royal family have caught up with the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to bear in mind, like, she was Lady Diana Spencer, and her dad was again quite connected to the royal family, so she wasn't exactly plucked off the streets. And it's the same with Kate Middleton. She's not exactly been plucked off the street. First girl I ever kissed was a girl called Shaz in a park, and I can't see her getting with William or Harry because it just wouldn't happen. And that's nothing against Shaz, but she's just not connected enough.
How was your first kiss? How did it come about?
It's in a cemetery.
What?
It's in a cemetery.
Why?
I don't know. Sexy, aren't they?
No, creepy.
No.
Who hangs out in cemeteries for one, and then why don't you take her to your house or like a park?
Because my mum's knows it, and we don't have. And she's got like. I think she's got some sort of. She's a very odd woman, but I'm sure she's got some form of agoraphobia because she's never.
Who's got some form of agoraphobia?
My mum.
What is agoraphobia?
Where you don't really like closed spaces, so she never really liked the doors being closed in the house.
Okay.
So I couldn't go around her house. Well, I couldn't go around mine because.
But like a park, like there's so many outside spaces other than a cemetery.
Yeah. But what difference does it make, really?
A cemetery's just a weird place. I think I've maybe been in 4 cemeteries in my entire life, and they've all been for funerals.
Well, maybe you need to. I once went on a tour of the cemetery.
What? What was there to see?
Like round the corner from here. Mate, it was very good, mate. There's a lot of social history in Salford. There was a Salford poisoner. That was the main thing I went for.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need more information.
So here, well, exactly, this is already, like, I'm telling you about this and you're going, oh, do you know what, that sounds alright, that. So, this man basically killed a load of people with poison. He was from Salford. And he was a serial killer. But most of them were his family, so that was disappointing. I saw an old man sit on a tombstone. I thought that was quite funny.
Like sitting on a tombstone?
Yeah, because he got tired.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, it wasn't just me on this tour.
Oh, I thought it was like a dead guy on a tombstone.
No.
Like he'd come out of the ground to be like, hello.
No, it's just an old man. Old man sitting on a tombstone. And like there was like some like dead footballers, not bothered. A bunch of like counsellors, like loads of social stuff happened in Salford.
Like what? What's like because are you Salford through and through?
Yeah, mate.
Okay. So what's like the biggest thing to happen in Salford? Isn't there like a lot of gangs in Salford? And
but that's like recent history, isn't it?
Oh.
I've got loads of Salford for you, mate.
Okay.
Right. So the gunpowder plot got thought up in Salford.
What's the gunpowder plot?
Okay, so the gunpowder plot. So have you been here on the 5th of November yet?
Remember the 5th of November.
Where they like have like fireworks and bonfires and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's because someone got caught called Guy Fawkes, who's now like famous because of V Vendetta.
He's trying to blow up Parliament.
Yeah, he's going to blow up Parliament.
In Manchester or in
London.
Okay.
But they initially came up with that plot in Oxford Hall in Salford.
Right.
So there you go. There's
who is they?
As in the plotters, the Catholic plotters that.
So why is Guy Fawkes the poster boy?
Well, because he was the one who supposedly got caught and was like tortured and made to confess about committing treason against the king.
Okay, so the blowing up was unsuccessful.
It was unsuccessful, yeah.
Right. So why in Australia do we have, or in New Zealand, not in Australia? Fireworks are illegal in Australia. You can't get them anywhere. Like
Why?
no one, because it's just dangerous. You see what happens here on the 5th of November. People are just dumb. Fire brigades are all going out. Like our emergency services are stretched enough as it is. Yours are as well. But, it's just stupid. But in New Zealand, you can buy big boxes of fireworks like you can here. So why is it celebrated all around the world when some guy tried to blow up a parliamentary building?
Well, I don't know if it's necessarily celebrated all around the world. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if it's because, if I'm right in saying, is New Zealand a member of the Commonwealth?
Yes, correct.
So it wouldn't surprise me if it was because of that connection.
But why are we celebrating it?
Because they would have blown up Parliament, and then there would have been anarchy and a new government, etc. So it's essentially celebrating that
the Parliament didn't get blown up.
Yeah, the Parliament didn't get blown up. So that's the
Okay.
reason
So
why.
you can blow up stuff in your backyard instead of blowing up Parliament.
Yeah.
Do you think it's to stop people from trying to blow up Parliament again?
I think it probably started out as don't commit treason, otherwise this will happen for you. And then they put like effigies of Guy Fawkes on a fire, but then it just slowly became a festival.
That's so weird.
Mm.
So
Humans are though, aren't they?
So the plot was what? Anything else significant happened in Salford?
So first vegetarian society got set up in Salford. First public library got set up in Salford.
First public library ever
Well, first free public library
in the world.
At least in the UK.
Okay.
I can't speak for the world, but first free public library got set up in Salford.
Which library?
I want to say it'll probably be the People's Workers Movement Library, but it might not be. But I know that's like a little fact about Salford, because basically, as you know, I've got like this little like group on Facebook where I put like writing prompts like
Yes.
more or less every day. I would often do that just for myself, like pretty much every day, and I'd like come up with things for me to like research. And because Salford was such a big part of what I used to talk about, I'd like look into all sorts of stuff, and I'd get like whenever like news articles come up about Salford on my phone, I like read them and stuff like that.
So anything to do with Salford, you'll just bang up for it.
Yeah.
So when people ask you where you're from, do you say Manchester?
No.
Like if you're like in Birmingham, let's say.
Yeah, if I'm far enough away, like so like when I was younger and I used to go to like America with my parents and stuff like that, I'd say Manchester because that's like slightly more well known. But I was surprised that. So when I first started doing comedy and I started doing stuff about like Salford and being from Salford, I was like worried that it wouldn't really connect. But like Salford, I think has got enough of an identity and a history.
People in Australia know about Salford.
Yeah, it's pretty big.
But it's never positive.
No, that's fine. If you can't be famous, just be infamous.
Do you want to raise your family in Salford?
Probably not. But that's just because I've got ambitions to like travel like loads of places.
Okay.
And like,
where do you want to travel?
I'd like to do, as part of like my performance, I'd like to do stuff in America and Canada.
Okay.
And I've always like North America.
Okay.
So like me and my girlfriend, we've spoke about going over to America at some point.
To live?
Yeah, like do like the 2-year visa and stuff like that.
That's exciting.
And because she's like a nurse, she'll probably be able to do that sort of stuff.
Is she very supportive of your art?
Yeah, she's very, very. Well, I mean, every time I've come to your gig, she's like sat in on it.
Yeah.
And stuff. But yeah, she's very supportive.
Does she think you're funny?
I'd like to hope so. She's like, if she weren't as supportive as she is, like, I'd probably struggle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you think you would, if she wasn't as supportive as she was, and it came to a point where you had to pick her or performing?
It'd be performing.
Really?
Yeah, well, because I think that after you do it for a little while, you stop doing it because you want to do it. You just start doing it because something in you makes you do it. Like I've been mentally exhausted, and like I got like really, really burnt out like around about this time last year, and I had to take a tiny break, only like a few weeks, I'd like 2 weeks of not doing anything, and then I just started doing it again, and that wasn't me going I want to do it. It was like, if I don't do it, I'll feel like shit.
Okay.
I do think that there's just something in me that just like makes me like perform and do stuff. So if she wasn't as supportive as she is and was like, oh, you need to like choose one or the other, which I don't think she'd do anyway.
No, I don't think she would either. Same with Hazel as well. I think if she tried to make me stop doing something that made me happy, it's probably not a relationship that we should be supporting.
Yeah, it's that's the thing. You've just got to be, supportive of each other in what you want to do. In the same way that I'm sure you wouldn't stop her from doing something that she enjoyed.
Not at all, mate.
Yeah.
I simply do not care. As long as you're happy, that really doesn't matter. So what else do you take an interest in other than performing? Like, do you like sport or do you like anything?
This is the problem that I have. Basically, that's just my keys.
He does drive a Fiat, ladies and gentlemen. It is true.
I have my keys on a essentially a shoelace. So the problem that I have is that the thing that's in me that makes me like perform and like make stuff for people to enjoy, whenever I like develop a new hobby or a new interest, there's like a tiny thing at the back of my mind that's like, oh, do you know what, you could like totally turn this into a web series. You could totally turn this into a podcast. You should do stand-up about this. And then it just becomes this constant grind.
So let's say you like start playing netball, right? And then you're like, man, like this could be great material. Like it always just ends up going back to...
Yeah, pretty much. Or I'll go, oh, do you know what you could do is you could, if it was netball, you could do the netball with a GoPro on and then turn it into like a 5-minute YouTube clip in which you like talk about like what stuff you're thinking about or like do like commentary of the games. And so it's weird. Like,
I'd love to see you play netball.
I used to when I was a kid. I used to be a lot sportier than I am now.
Okay.
And then I got asthma and my life was over.
You caught asthma? Like you developed it? Or?
Yeah. Well, my mum and dad smoked loads, so...
Really? So your parents gave you asthma?
Essentially, yeah.
I've never heard of that happening. You know how they say on like TV ads, like secondhand smoke gives your kids asthma? And like my parents never smoked, so I never thought about it, but I was like, that must be bullshit.
Honestly, mate, like my mum and dad, easily 60 a day.
Still?
If not more. Well, obviously not my dad, but...
Well, yeah, your dad's definitely slowed down on the dairy. 60 each or 60 total?
60 each. Easy.
Can't you only buy like 20 at a time?
No, you can buy like... I mean, I don't smoke myself, but, my dad once got done for coming back with like too many cigarettes in his case.
Yeah.
And, like, if you get done with that, like, they like take them off you and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And he couldn't convince them that he hadn't brought these cigarettes back to like sell.
How many did he have?
He had a fucking load. He had enough.
Thousands?
He had enough that like customs were like, you need to come in here, sir. And they were going, look, you're going to sell these. And he couldn't, there were so many of them that he couldn't convince them that they were actually just for him and his wife.
Oh my God.
So like that gives you an idea of how much.
Was that before they had like set limits on it? Because now it's like 200 cigarettes, that's it. If you go over that, then no.
I have no idea. I've not had enough money to travel in years and years. So,
right.
So I've no idea, mate.
Where do you get your money from?
Gigging. Sometimes working in a call centre.
Okay.
But,
sometimes?
Sometimes, yeah. I used to work there like a lot, but like I earn like enough money from like gigs and doing shows and stuff like that it's like not as bad. And my girlfriend earns a lot of money, so
she's loaded.
Spongy sponge.
Do you feel like you have sort of dreams and aspirations though to like get your masters, get performing, and then like pay it forward for all the people that have got you to where you are? Is that like a goal of yours?
I think eventually, once I've got, once everything starts to kind of snowball, I'd like to help my mum, help her, and help my girlfriend. But I think it sounds bad. I think like the less help that you get the more you can say, that's mine.
Yeah, I get you. I agree with you.
Yeah. Like,
because you worked for it and you didn't need anyone else to help you get it. I'm a little bit like that in a sense where I've never, since I left like school, I got a full-time job, I've studied a degree, been very successful, moved over here. I've never had to ask for any money from anyone, any sort of help. The only help I would look for would be sort of emotional help if I'm a bit fucking sad, you know, from time to time we all get sad. But that's sort of all I've needed. And it does make me feel good when I do things because it's like, you know, this is what I've done, this is what I've created. And again, the emotional support that I get and, you know, like cooking meals for me, doing my washing, all those sort of things are obviously helpers along the way. But from a financial point of view, everything I make is mine. But then it's mine to share as well if I choose to. Yeah,
like obviously, you know, you put that back in. You know, you can't put a price on, you know, emotional well-being, even though it is, you know, as important, if not more important, than, you know, you having stuff. So like that's the kind of stuff that I'd want to kind of help, you know, like help put back in for. But I do think that the more you can do stuff on your own, not only the more you can claim it as your own, but also the more freedom it gives you. As part of this like masters, I ended up looking into something called DIY ethic, which is like a punk movement, and I feel like a lot of comics do it, especially like, you know, comics who, you know, have the drive to put their own stuff out there. That, you know, like you've got all your own equipment, you can do all your own stuff, you can put it all out there and you know how to do it. I imagine that if you didn't know how to edit or if you didn't know how to upload, the moment that you don't know how to do these things and you then offload it onto other people, it then not only bloats the project, but it also takes some of the autonomy away from the project. Like in terms of your direction, the stuff that you want to edit. So I think the more that you can claim that something is your own and the more that you can claim your own autonomy on your own things, the better in the long run, really. And it can just be a bit of a ball ache in terms of actually getting stuff like out there or kind of wider. Ultimately, you're your own island and you can build on that as much as you want. Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you completely. And as well, like, how long have you been doing comedy for? 6 years now.
6 years. What do you think is missing from comedy now?
I don't know. What do you mean by that? Because like, do you mean by comedy? Do you mean stand up?
Yeah.
Okay.
From like comedy that is being consumed now, do you think there's anything missing?
I think that there is a big swell of you're gonna have to edit some boring shit out here, mate.
No, it all goes in.
Oh well, apologies. Fast forward the next few minutes if you so wish.
This isn't meant to be like a hilariously funny podcast. This is real interviewing.
Oh well.
You know, I'm a silly goose outside, and sometimes it can be silly goose. Like we might do a second one, and it might be silly. But today, I just felt like being serious.
All right, fair enough.
So here we are.
Right, here we are. Talk about Diana and the state of comedy. So, okay, right. So in a lot of people, right. So go on ITV and watch a show called The Comedy Years. It's currently on ITV Player. And they make this argument, I think in the second or the third episode, about like 1984 being a really influential year for comedy, at least British comedy, because it's the year that Eric Morecambe died, and it's also the year that Tommy Cooper died, and like The Young Ones has their second series around this time, and there's like this like split off in terms of like alternative comedy and what was mainstream comedy, and it becomes like this kind of like two kind of battling forces. And in my opinion, mainstream comedy kind of absorbed alternative comedy, and I think that a lot of what is mainstream now.
How do you define mainstream comedy?
Just popular.
Okay.
Just, stuff that's like out there. A lot of your James Acasters, your I don't know, Lee Max, your Mighty Boosh, your like mainstream. They're on BBC. They're very out there. 6, 7, 8 million people can like view their content, and they've probably got thousands and thousands of fans. They are quite alternative in terms of the approach that they've kind of taken, and I think that it's kind of become quite cyclical in terms of rather than there being like a mainstream and an alternative.
Yeah.
However, I do think that there is like a big swell, like a grassroots level of like some kind of alternative comedy wave. Like I've definitely noticed people like I think you've had people like Tom B and Andrew Marsh, who are doing this stuff that it's like it's not necessarily literative comedy. They're like creating like non-literative comedy, and that's something that I try and create when I do my stuff. I'm not bothered in like creating jokes or something. I did that for years, and I got bored, and I kind of felt like a square peg in a round hole. But I think that there is people like Sean Morley, and there's these people who I don't think are like fit this mainstream mould, but are doing something like quite different, and it's not comedy. Like no one would watch what Sean Morley does and goes, that's not comedy, but it's certainly not mainstream comedy.
Yeah.
And I think that there'll be like this kind of second swell maybe in 5-10 years, and I'd like to hope that it'll cause this like rift again, this split where there's mainstream and whatever alternative comedies coming again. So that's what I think it's missing currently, that at the minute mainstream and alternative comedy are the same thing.
Okay, so you want to see another divide, basically.
Yeah, I think that there needs to be an alternative to comedy, because most people say comedy now, they don't say alternative comedy.
Would you describe yourself as an alternative comic?
At one point, no. I think I don't like comedy.
Neither do I.
In terms of like a label.
Yeah.
I'd say that when I first met you and we did that bingo hall, I'd have classed myself as like an alternative comic.
Yeah.
But looking back at it then, that was still like, again, if you take mainstream and alternative as the same thing because they've kind of merged, I think that there's probably quite a lot of mainstream comics that are alternative, and I think there's quite a lot of alternative comics, well, that are like quite mainstream, like using that as them like being merged. And I think that back then I'd have been like, oh, do you know what? I'm like an alternative comic, and I'm like doing like little weird things, but it's kind of mainstream, the vehicle that I'm putting it in. But after I had this big burnout, and I was just like, oh, do you know what? I'm just gonna do stuff that I enjoy, and now I don't even really like putting the label comedy on things, because I think that putting a label of comedy on something puts a pressure on the act. It puts a pressure on the audience, and neither of those I think are necessarily very conducive to actually having a good show.
Yeah.
Or creating the type of like show and experience that I want to create. I started looking at the work of like Andy Kaufman, and he never classed himself as a comedian.
Yeah.
And I think that the more and more time that I'm spending like developing the act that I've got now, like, because I say that I've been going for like 6 years, I feel like I've pretty much started all over again. I might as well be 1 year in at this point now, because I've scrapped everything. But the more and more that I like develop, the more and more I feel like I'm kind of a comic theatre maker.
Okay.
Rather than a comic performer, rather than a comedian or an alternative comic. And if that makes me alternative, then that's fine. But I don't think I tick enough of the boxes anymore.
to be alternative.
No.
So let's move away from comedy and alternative comedy. What were you like at school?
Just very clever.
If you do say so yourself.
No, it's me. I've got like all the way up until I was in uni. I'd get like A's and stuff like that.
Okay. So until it mattered.
Yeah. It's just crazy about how I look back at what I like. Like people ask, "Oh, were you funny at school?" and all this sort of stuff, and I found that when I went to school, I went to like a really rough school.
Yeah. And
I got bullied like quite badly, and I remember in my head, if I stayed up late, it was like longer time not being in school.
Yeah.
Because like my logic was, if I go to bed at 12, I wake up the next morning at 8, and it feels like the same amount of time has passed. Like you don't feel like you've been asleep for 8 hours. You fall asleep and wake up. That time might as well have not existed. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah.
So in my head, if I stayed up till 2-3 in the morning,
okay,
I'd still wake up at 8.
Yeah.
But I'd had like an additional 3 hours of not being in school. And so I ended up watching all these kind of like late night comedy programs, stuff like Fry and Laurie, Paramount Comedy, and I found that because they were like so obscure,
yeah,
and I was essentially ripping off their like lines and stuff like that to like show the bullies up, and that's kind of, I think, the genesis of me going on the journey that I'm on now.
Okay. Well, let's talk about your lack of sleep to set up for a full day of school working.
Yeah.
What? Why were your parents letting you stay up so late, or they didn't know?
My mum and dad have always been like quite kind of loose with me in terms of like being strict. I was always like quite well behaved, and I found that basically if I was as well behaved as was necessary, I just kind of got let do what I want.
Okay.
And in addition, because I was an only child, in inverted commas, for my childhood, I also found that if I did something wrong and I didn't tell anyone and no one found out about it, I hadn't done anything wrong.
Okay, fair enough.
So anything that would have got me into trouble that I could conceivably not say anything about, I wouldn't say anything about. So for them, I think they may have been concerned that I was like staying awake quite late, but like my dad worked nights and my mum worked days, and they were both nurses, so they had like quite busy jobs and stuff like that. And I think in their head that basically if I got up for school every morning and went into school, then it wasn't a concern that I was staying up that late. And because my grades stayed consistently like good, because I think even at that like age, I kind of realised that it might have been like my parenting, like of me going, if I'm as good as I need to be, then I get left alone. I kind of realised in school that if I put the answer that they want to see on this test, then
they'll just leave me alone.
Yeah, they'll just leave me alone. If they ask me what 2 and 2 equals and I say 4, they won't question how I got there.
Yeah.
So and because it was a rough school, like it weren't special measures, but it was very, very rough. And it was the first school in the UK to have an on-site police officer at all times. Really?
Is that why the military were there on that day of 9/11?
No, not that day. It was just that was just, I think, for shits and giggles.
Just for a wee bit of a laugh.
That was for nothing will happen in London today. Shit, go to London. That was for one of them. But I just kind of realised in school that, and at home, that I could do what I wanted so long as I kind of
flew under the radar.
Well, not only flew under the radar, but also kind of did what was required, and I think that kind of.
You never had a rebellious stage or any time where you sort of broke the rules to be like, yeah, I'm a bad boy?
I think I'm doing it now. I think I'm probably doing it after like my dad's death. I realised that that I'd been doing so. One of the things that like really hit me with my dad's death was, so he died at 59, and my granddad died at 59. Like same thing. My uncle was like there at like.
Was it because your dad was smoking so many cigarettes?
Smoking and drinking. It was more drinking than smoking.
Okay.
But he had cancer in his liver and cancer in his lungs, and he had like cancer. Basically, if you've got liver cancer, it doesn't get like, it's not like skin cancer. It doesn't like show itself until like quite a late stage.
You're fucked, basically.
Yeah, like at the point where they start kind of realising it, you know, it's good night Vienna at that point. Once I found out the type of cancer that he had, I think there was something like you had an 80% chance of dying within 12 months of like being diagnosed.
Wow.
Yeah. And when they like when he died, he had liver cancer and lung cancer, and it was like in his nodes and stuff like that, and his organs were shutting down. And because of the nature of the cancer, there's no way of knowing whether he had it in his lungs and it spread to his liver, or if he had it in his liver and it spread. But I personally think it was probably liver and it like spread, or they were running in conjunction. But anyway, what was it? You
were saying that you came to a realisation when your dad died.
Yeah, so I came to a realisation when my dad died that I could be, so I'm like I'm 29 now, if whatever my granddad had and my dad had is genetic.
I don't think it is.
Well, the thing is, I think you can be more genetically predisposed to, you know, getting cancers and stuff like that.
But you're not a heavy drinker or a smoker.
No, but again, that's like partly because I've kind of seen the lifestyle that my parents have got.
Yeah.
But, you know, if I could be conceivably halfway through my life now, and when my dad like passed away, I realised that I'd been doing stuff, not necessarily because I wanted to do stuff, but because it was kind of expected of me to like do these things.
Yeah.
And I think that was when I kind of started to go, oh, no, actually I do want to like do that. I do want to try this. I want to. So I feel like I'm probably going through it now because my dad's death, and by extension my granddad's death, was like I'm like I never knew him. It was only because of this, like me getting told this. It kind of like freed me from like some of these chains and shackles that I feel like I was in. I mean, you've probably seen it yourself. Like, I feel like loads of people in comedy do stuff because that's what they're like expected to do.
Yeah.
In terms of like how they act. Like, I feel like I see people put statuses and posts, and like people are like liking it and commenting on stuff like that. And I think you're essentially just doing this like people will put stuff like, oh, I'm gigging here, I'm doing this. And I think what you're actually saying is, I look at me, comedy industry, I am gigging tonight, rather than going, oh, my friends and family would be interested in seeing what I'm up to today.
When I first started in comedy, I saw somebody else put a picture of them and then their dates down the side. And I put my dates, including like Holdfast, Fab Cafe, like whatever it was down the edge, like these are my gigs for the month. And people in Australia are like, wow, you're just doing so many gigs. And I'm like, yeah, I am. Am I though? Am I really? This year, I've hardly written any new comedy. I don't post up about like gigs I'm going to and things like that. I post up about gigs I'm organising because I want other people to come and enjoy other people's success. But for me, comedy is not something that brings me an awful lot of joy and happiness in regards to writing it and getting up on stage and doing it. And the more I care about it, the worse I become. So I've stopped caring so much.
I think that is. I think that's probably you're on the way to like a healthy way of like viewing it. I think there are a lot of people who like put like a lot of their like mental acuity into it.
There's a comedian that I know that's only done 6 gigs. She can only do a gig maybe every month or month and a half, because to build up to 1 gig, she can't do like walk up open mic, because like she can't just decide on the day she's going to do comedy. So she's got to book it, have 2 weeks of like prepping, getting ready, then do the gig, and then like the come down lasts like another week, 2 weeks, just after the gig, because it's just such a big thing for her.
Wow, I wish I still had that.
Yeah.
When I got like really burnt out, I think when I look at it objectively, it was that I was essentially using comedy as a crutch, and you know I'd like not properly like processed like my dad's death, and like come out the other end of a 4-year relationship, and just various other things that I was like having to deal with, and I personally think people rely on like comedy like way too much, and it ends up, you know, sending them spiraling. I remember I got emailed off a booker, because I would send between 50 to 75 emails a day.
Really?
Yeah. So like my like little admin writing group, that was just kind of born out of one, because I felt like people were feeling a bit kind of mentally low sometimes. I feel like it kind of goes in waves, particularly around kind of like a month or two after Edinburgh. Like people, I think, kind of dip a little bit, but like I ended up putting out, I'd do myself a writing task and I'd do myself an admin task, and I'd like look at some kind of like motivational thing like every single day. And obviously, and I feel like if someone else is doing that, I feel like that's probably a tiny bit better for you than, you know, me doing it for myself. But yeah, I'd put out like 50 to 75 emails a day, and someone messaged me back one time and they were like, "You've emailed me every day for the last 12 days," and I was like, you know what, I'm like clearly not very well right now.
And did they book you?
No.
Oh, why not?
Oh, do you know what? That person actually, they booked me like about a month later for a gig that was like 5 to 10 minutes, and it was like arse end of nowhere. And I don't know for certain, but I got the feeling that they were like taking the piss a little bit, as if to go, well, you know, if you're gonna like mither me so much for a gig, I'm gonna give you this gig that is like
the worst gig I have available.
Yeah, basically.
Can you tell me who that is later, off air?
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, good. Well, we've done over an hour.
Yeah, mate.
It's over.
Wow.
We started on conspiracy theories and we ended on shit gigs and butt fuck nowhere.
That's very much how my own podcast goes.
Is there anyone you'd like to thank?
Just my girlfriend, my mum.
Even the way you say mum is very Salford. Me mum.
Me mum.
Can you do like your best like Salford accent?
I once got mugged and this guy was like, "Where are you from?" I was like, "Langworthy." He's like, "You're not from Langworthy." I am. You don't even sound like you're from Langworthy. Well, that's where I'm from. He's like, "Yeah, but where are you from originally?" "Oh, right, Langworthy." He went, where, if you're from Langworthy, how come we've never seen you around there? I was like, "Mate, we're not there now."
We're in Swinton.
Can we get on with this mugging, please?
Did they take anything from you?
No, because luckily I was able to. There was like another person who came in the subway, and I was like, "These 3 men have just tried mugging me. I would come into this subway," and I left with this person.
Classic way to get out of a mugging.
Yeah.
Good job. Well, look, thank you very much, Tom Short. Have you had fun?
Yeah, it's been alright. It's been nice.
That's good. It's a bit too serious, or just right?
I thought we'd have had a bit more bants. #bants.
Maybe you can come back for a second time, and maybe I'll be in a banter mood. But I had a very serious podcast before you, so maybe that's got me in a serious mood. I'm going to try and pep up for the next one, though.
Oh, good.
It is very mentally exhausting, as you can probably appreciate. I've got a headache, and I'm going to go and eat some cold chicken.